So we're beginning. So this chapter is about a sequel, sort of an extension of the first, which is the idea of that the state of full consciousness exists. It truly is a state of being that is our natural state. And there's a great deal of controversy about such subjects as channeling and whether channeling is real or whether it's a valid way of conveying or translating or transferring information, and subjects such as the comparison to telepathy or different ways of communication in extraordinary ways, such as things like clairvoyance or neutrino, whatever systems beyond anything I even understand. But I am familiar with channeling, and because I've had some very powerful experiences with it throughout many years, I don't have the same sort of negative response to it that many people do. And so I'm sort of speaking in defense of it, as some will say it's part of a false light paradigm, or it's just another extension of enslavement or hierarchy or whatever. And they would claim that it's a reason for why they are not a light worker. And so this explanation is more or less in defense of why I am a light worker. And let's take it back to the beginning of the other video, which was this account of this awakening, a day in my life when I woke up. And I want to just speak about this one experience to explain it, because it's such an important part of the whole understanding, because there's so many different worldviews and religions and spiritual practices that it's difficult to really get a grasp of this. And yet for me, this was not a theory or a hypothetical question. From a young age, I had always been on some kind of a spiritual quest, asking, who am I? Why am I here? What is my real purpose for being here? Where am I? Well, it led to an experience which I've accounted for in other videos, which is an explanation of this awakening. And I want to say exactly what happened, because this is sort of crucial to the understanding and putting it into perspective with all the rest of the information that follows from it. So let me say what happened. On one day, I woke. It was a beautiful fall day, beautiful blue sky. All the colors of the leaves were changing. And my friends and I were going to a music concert. And we decided to start out early in the morning. We were going to make a picnic, and we're going out into the forest where many musicians gathered, and they all gathered in a circle to play this style of what at that time was bluegrass and folk music, jamming in the woods with a picnic. So we went and we had this extraordinary day playing music. Later in the day, I got very hungry and I wanted to come back home. And so I got a ride with friends, and I decided it was such a beautiful day, wouldn't they just let me off at the end of the lake, because I lived on the other end of it and I wanted to walk. So I'm walking along, and I'm feeling like such good energy, and so in awe of the beauty of this day, the colors of the leaves and the white puffy clouds, and everything was just so beautiful. And I'm walking by this edge of the lake, and the mirror reflection was in the lake of all the colors. And I'm just like marveling at this sight. And I'm watching leaves fall and gently float down and land on the surface of the water. And as they did, I could see the shadow on the bottom of the pond come up and sort of meet the leaf. And I'm watching this strange sort of mirror reflection in the water. And suddenly I felt it was like this ancient presence was coming into my being from somewhere. Almost like a rumbling, like a geyser starting to come up through me. A geyser about to like blast through the surface of the earth or something like this. And this feeling started to like become more and more powerful. And with that, I started to notice that this part of my what I would call the word making or the labeling part of my mind that labels different things I'm looking at. For example, this is a leaf and that's a tree. This word making labeling capacity of the egoic or the ego mind began to sort of like fade away. I started to like detach from it. The more this presence came into me, I started to feel like I was detaching from this word making labeling process that goes on inside your mind. And from this point on, I can only describe it by metaphors. And so, the one metaphor I've often used is, imagine yourself like a bird, and you're sitting in a tree, and all around you, all you see is leaves, and you're looking out at the world all your life through these leaves of the tree. And then suddenly you fly out of the tree, and you're way up in the sky, and then you're looking down now at the tree, which is just a speck below you. That's what it was like. It's as if I had suddenly flown out of this tree I'd been in all of my life, detached from it, and I'm watching the word-making, labeling part of my mind like a river way down in the valley. And with that, suddenly, there was like a shift, where I suddenly was like freed from this part of my mind. And with that, I literally slipped out of time, and I literally entered timelessness. And with that, this presence of energy that had been filling through me came up through me like a geyser of love that you could only describe as all of the oceans and rivers and atmospheres in the world filled me, as compared to, let's say, one glassful of love, which was like what I feel before this experience. For example, way back in the morning time, I was feeling just this glassful. In this moment, suddenly it was like all of the feelings of love, the depths of all the oceans and rivers and atmospheres in the world. By comparison, it was infinite. It cannot even be conceived of from inside this state of the third dimensional consciousness, or inside that bubble, so to speak, which is another metaphor I've used. It was like as if you lived in this ocean of love. All that was your natural state, and one day the tide brought you in and left you in this little pool, and you're standing there in a pool with a bubble around you in this little pool of water, and that's your life in the third dimension, while the ocean of love is way out to sea. And then in this moment, it was like the ocean came back in, the bubble disappeared, and now I'm all the ocean again. And in that moment, that feeling left me in a state of crying with joy. I was in tears with joy, because I knew without a question that I and everything around me and everyone else is God, and you are in the state of God. All these birds going over are agreeing, and they're saying, yes, it's true, we're all playing, because there is this state of Godhood. It's real. It's not a myth. All the religions have talked about it. All the greatest artists and writers have written about it. They've written about paradise lost. Well, in that moment, I was in paradise found. Everywhere I looked was paradise on earth. It was heaven on earth. And that's what we've come to this life to experience, to understand that this is heaven on earth. We're just separated from it by this veil of forgetfulness, as it's been called. The veil of forgetfulness, where our beliefs and everything we came into when we entered from when we were born into the state of the third dimension, we literally forgot the origins and the natural state of who we are. We came here for very heroic reasons. We came here to help out in this time of great need, in this time of awakening. This is the time called the time of great awakening. And some of the great channels are talking about that. They're explaining it. So whether it's galactics who are here, who are helping out, who are helping deactivate the detonation of nuclear warheads, which they are doing, because they are in. Many of the most positive galactics and ETs are in that state of full consciousness. So are the soul level teachers. They're in that state of full consciousness. Christ was talking about it. He was talking about, go forth and seek joy. The kingdom of heaven is within you, and it is. And he said, you can do as I do and much more, and you can and you will. But this is what's being forgotten. It's not emphasized. There's so much emphasis on the fear and the powerlessness that it's often forgotten that the real state of who we are and who I am and you, who you are, and everything around you, every leaf, every bird, every tree, is in this state of God essence. It will never be lost. There is nothing that can mess up the intention of that power of love. The power of divine love is so powerful that no military, no bombs. One channel was asked, well, what about 10 hydrogen bombs? And the response was, well, you can mess it up a little bit. And so if 10 hydrogen bombs can only mess it up a little bit, then you can imagine what this power of the force of the creative divine love really is. We lose track of that when we're in the third dimension because we're separated from it. We chose to separate ourselves from this state of divine consciousness. We basically ran away from God. It was like running away from home. And throughout our whole history, we've been so damaged by the catastrophes and the space wars and those who wanted to enslave us and those who damaged our DNA and those who tampered with our light bodies and everything else. So we are literally, the cellular structure of our bodies is remembering and carries this trauma with us. And so there is a great healing that needs to be done still. But we are awakening. And that's what is so upsetting to the powers that be, which are the powers that were. They don't want us to wake up, and they know there's too many people waking up. And so the point of me telling this story is not because of what it was for me, but to tell those of you who want to listen that you have this power. You can be self-empowered. You are awakening. You have all the power of everything you ever need within you, and that is what you're here for, to explore. And everyone will have their own spiritual path and their own practice or their own spiritual worldview. But in essence, there is a unique one which is yours, and everyone else's is their own. And so, in that moment when I woke up, I felt like I was in heaven on earth. I could feel like everything was just waves of liquid velvet love energy moving through every object. Everything you looked at was like a precious gem, a world that was beyond any description. You could look at it in awe. It was so precious, and everything around you was like just this imbued with this essence of innocence that was so profound, this true meaning of the word innocence of everything. And every object, even the mountains, were drowning in the roar of silence. This depth of silence was just bathing everything. And everywhere you look, you could see that even the mountain was a living being. And everything you looked at, or I looked at in this moment, was just beyond description. And the feeling of love was so indescribable that there was no measure to it. It was beyond measure. And I stood as the sun went down and it started to get dark, and I finally just had stood in this one spot for what seemed like 5 or 6 hours until finally it got dark. And I walked home, then I lay down to a flood of thoughts come flashing through my mind, and I finally just fell asleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I was never quite the same again. And I tried to tell people, and everyone I've tried to tell ever since thinks I'm totally crazy, or that this was some voodoo experience or whatever, but I've had one too many of these different alternate, non-ordinary experiences at this point in my life to know that there is definitely something far more, and there certainly is. And so I encourage people to be brave, be bold, explore your own spiritual path. Don't be talked into too much of giving your power away, explore it for yourself. But there are very good teachers, and they're in every realm, and they're all around you. And when you're in the right vibe, you will find what you need. And so I'll stop now, because the main point I wanted to recount this story was to give those who want to see it just the encouragement to know that it exists. This state of consciousness is real, and it exists, and you're in it. So, happy travels, happy trails.